and we are back on the chosen baseball journey with Jonathan Hacohen and Karim Garcia. Karim, did you get signed by the Dallas Cowboys after they're bouncing in the playoffs? Are they looking for a new quarterback?
Absolutely. I'm going for the QB now this year. We're going all the way.
You know, it's funny. We talk about baseball salaries and 20 million being a lot of money. You know, when you're an NFL quarterback, you're making 50 million in your sleep. Uh, every sport has its own budgets and monies and how they get diverted. But man, if you're an NFL QB, you think about Pat Mahomes, right? Pat Mahomes, Super Bowl MVP again. And when he first came into the NFL, I thought to myself, you know, he made a big mistake. His dad was a big league pitcher. You have a longer career as a baseball player. He should have gone into baseball. Pat Mahomes proved me wrong.
Absolutely. $450 million later, I mean, he's doing everything right. Three Super Bowls in 6 years. Unbelievable.
And you know, by the time he retires, he's probably going to be worth close to $1 billion.
Absolutely. Probably more with endorsements.
So now, of course, in order to, you have to have talent, right? You got to play on the right team. It's nice if you get success, but you also got to have the right agent. So I've never asked you this yet, Kareem. How did you go about picking your baseball agent during your baseball career?
Well, at the beginning of my career, they told me, "Oh, this guy is a good agent." When they signed me, Mike Brito, I didn't know anything about agents or anything like that. In Mexico, you don't use agents. You just go and talk to the owner or to the GM and do your contract in Mexico. But once you go to the States, it's a whole different ball game because in the States are your contracts a little fine print in the bottom, especially in a major league contract, it says I can send you to the minor leagues anytime that I want, at least three times during 3 years, which I didn't know. I thought you make it to the major leagues, you stay in the major leagues, but no, that is not the case. And my first agent was a guy, a Latin guy, and he was learning too. As I was learning, he was learning with me. So I had to let him go and switch another agent that had more experience and help me out through my career, especially in the minor leagues when you don't make a lot of money and they can get you a couple deals here and there that you can sign and make a little extra money for you to survive.
Was it Scott Boras that you picked?
No, 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 I never had Scott Boras in my career.
When you went about picking agents, did you find during your career that they were reaching out to you and telling you, "Hey, I can help you out," or did you speak to your teammates and ask them who they use as an agent? How did you go about picking your agent the second time around?
Usually, as you're going up in the ladder in the minor leagues and you're moving, I wasn't a prospect, and now I became the number 10 prospect for the Dodgers. And then guys that start coming up to me say, "Hey, my agent wants to meet you. Let's take you out to lunch. Let you get a free lunch today." I say, "Sure, why not?" I'm like, "Free lunch? Who am I going to say no to? Let's go." So I take a free lunch here and there, talking to guys. Once I got to AAA, my manager there say, "Hey, my agent would like to talk to you, and he's a big time guy and." Listen to him, take a meal, but really listen to him and what he brings to the plate. So I did listen to him. I did sign with him. And, I was a young guy. He got a lot of experienced guys in the major leagues, but I mean, it's always the guy that helped me.
Can you say the name of your agent?
It was, the beginning was Ron Shapiro, and then was, after that was Robert Barrett, Bobby Barrett. Yeah.
And I remember when I was talking to Steve Carsey about it, he was using Roger Clemens' agent at the time, the Hendricks brothers.
Okay.
And it's funny, different points in, you look over different decades, certain agents, were considered the big agents at the time. But the guy who's really transcended all of this has been Scott Boras. If you think about how many years now Scott Boras has been doing this. But you and I were talking about this off air, and it's funny, folks, when we're going to record this episode, this is our third try at it as far as schedule goes, internet connections go. And it's probably a good thing that we didn't tape the second time around, because if we had taped when we are supposed to, we would not have been able to announce that Cody Bellinger is in fact signed. It was this big Scott Boras five, as they called them. You had Cody Bellinger, you had Jordan Montgomery, Blake Snell, Matt Chapman, and JD Martinez. So all these five are sitting out here. Where spring training is well underway now, and yet nobody was signed. And then all of a sudden you find out, wait a minute, Cody Bellinger has signed. He went back to the Cubs at the end, but as you told me off the air, he didn't get the 200 million that he's expecting.
Absolutely, something went wrong on that part, waiting too long, maybe thinking that you can get a 200 million when the 160 million dollar, sounds pretty good for 6 years or 8 years, whatever. It's guaranteed money. You never leave money on the table. Again, he's gambling on his career, having a career year again. If he struggles this year, is going to be trouble for him, because he only has 2 years left on the contract, and he can opt out, like you mentioned, on the second year or the third year. So if he has a bad year, he's not opting out, and then you go to the third year hoping that you're having a great year.
You think about it, 30 million isn't too shabby. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, 30 million be good for your pay for your career, let alone one season. And for those Yankees fans that are saying, why couldn't we get Bellinger for 30 million? Why can't we sign Blake Snell? With their luxury tax, every dollar they're spending, they have to spend a dollar and a bit in tax money. So $30 million salary is really 60 plus million dollar salary. That paying $60 million for Bellinger for 1 year, 60 million for Snell for 1 year, that's a lot of moolah.
Yes, 120 mil. So unless you get rid of Giancarlo Stanton and the contract, you're not able to sign another top name pitcher or hitter right now.
And if you're going to trade Stanton, which I don't think they are, I think they're waiting for him to bounce back. And you're going to sell for pennies on the dollar. If he had, let's say, $120 million left, I don't think anybody's picking up the 120 million. I think the Yankees would have to pick up at least half of that. And if you're already picking up half of it, you might as well just keep the full player, because if he's on, he's 40 home runs in the bank. And this is where I'm thinking, I really wanted to say this is a Scott Boras issue. I wanted to say, you know what, the teams are sending a message to Scott Boras. You know what, we're not going to sign your clients at big money. The time is coming to an end. But on the other hand, I started thinking about the Carlos Rondon deal. I started thinking of the Darren Dreyfurts in this world. Chris Davis, and where I'm starting to see this happen here, Kareem, is I think teams are saying, look, when you have the Shohei Otanis and the Aaron Judges of this world, they're going to get their money. And when you have guys that are going to get between the $10-15 million mark, by all means. But when we look at the list of the Scott Boras five, they're good players. But I don't think any of us are looking at them and saying, this is guaranteed Hall of Famers. I don't think any of them are going to make the Hall of Fame. They're all very good to good players. But I don't think teams are willing to pay superstar crazy money, 200 million plus, for pretty good players anymore. I think now the line is in the sand. You're going to take our $15 million. You're going to take 5 years, 75, 90 million, and you're going to like it. And I think Scott Boras has a hard time with that, because even when his players are good, very good, I think he wants them to get paid like superstars. But to me, superstars, you got to have Hall of Fame numbers. You got to have something to justify those big contracts.
Oh, absolutely. And these guys, I mean, they have proven, Blake Snell has a great year, but again, you never know, because as hard as he throws, he's a ticking bomb. At any minute, he can get hurt, and goodbye your 90, $120 million for 4 years. Tommy John, it takes you at least 18 months, 2 years to come back. So you already lost half of the contract right there. So it's very difficult right now, and these guys are not getting any younger anytime soon. So they're getting older. JD Martinez too, has great numbers, great career, but like you mentioned, they're not going to get the 40, $50 million guarantee right now for a team, especially when spring training already started. We're already having games, and these guys are still, working out at the complex.
Matt Chapman, I living in Toronto, I've seen Matt Chapman now for 3 years. And I got to say, gold glove defense, one of the best third basemen glove wise. But after April, he didn't hit. He basically did not hit from May to September, if you look at the numbers. And for a guy that didn't hit most of the year, it's tough to justify for a team to say, okay, I'll pay him $30 million times 5 years. And I think that's where you're going to see more of what they call these pillow contracts, which is what Cody Bellinger just got. They say, okay, get 30 million for 1 year, can opt out if you want. If not, you're staying for the second year, another $30 million, and you can opt out. And if you stay in, then you're getting $20 million. Because you look at Cody Bellinger and you look at his career in totality, you have MVP years and you have years that he's basically average. Blake Snell, Cy Young, or very,
Mhm.
very average, you know? And Blake
Yeah.
Snell likes to throw a lot of walks. You know, I can say for me, when I construct a team and I think about pitchers, I don't know about you as a manager, Kareem, but pitchers who throw a lot of walks drive me up the wall because I feel like they're not giving themselves a chance to succeed.
Oh, absolutely, especially at the major league level. You're supposed to you're supposed to be really accurate, with the strike zone. You can get wild a little bit, but that's what you work on between outings with your pitching coach. Try to get a little finer, better, and that's what you do during spring training too. That's what the long sessions. That's what you're working out with the catcher and working on your secondary pitch, which could be the slider or the changeup, stuff like that. And for me, Cody Bellinger signing right now with the Cubs, I've been working with him on hitting sliders, middle inside for him because that's all they throw him all the time. Once he gets hooked into that, he's going to strike out 3, 4 times a game for a lot of games. I seen it with the Dodgers, and when he gets in a bad streak, it's all they do to him. Show him a fastball up and in, and then just throw him sliders, and he will chase.
And Jordan Montgomery, a guy I love watching the pitch. I think he's a fantastic pitcher. If I was constructing a baseball team, I'd love to see him as my number three, my number four guy. And why I say that is because you don't always know what Montgomery you're getting. You know, it's this guy is very special in the playoffs. I understand that. Got to keep in mind he's been traded a couple of times very, very
Mhm.
recently. So teams are not holding on to him. And to me, there's a reason why. It's I look at in Toronto, I look at Chris Bassett, and I say Bassett's a great team guy. He's a steady pitcher. And to me, that's worth 3 million, 3 years, 75, 80 million. That's in the prospects of what I'm looking at. That age, and when you have like a 500 to a little over 500 pitcher, you know, the days where we're seeing Kareem guys getting 21, 22 wins and, 200 plus innings guaranteed, those are going by the wayside. I talked about, when I went to Cooperstown, I look at some of the pitching records. We're never going to see these records anymore. Now we're getting to the case where if you have a pitcher that can make 20 plus starts and pitch about 6 innings, that's a Cy Young pitcher. The measuring stick has changed a lot. And that's where I see Montgomery, and I think Montgomery also was hoping for close to 200 million. I think he's gonna have to take the Bellinger deal, and I think he'll be have to be happy if he gets it.
Absolutely. I think he's going to get probably a 4-year deal max. I don't see him getting more than that right now, especially, teams already spend their money in the other guys that are in spring training right now working out. Some guys might have a little extra money, but you're not going to be a contender. Either you want to be a contender and take less money, or you want to be super rich, but just see the playoff at your home, on TV.
I feel like Scott Boras is sitting at home, he's watching the spring training games. The second he finds out about an injury, finds out that the Orioles lost starting pitcher Bradish, finds out that Cody Senga's out for the Mets, and we'll talk about that in a future week because I don't see that turning out very good for them either. And I'm sure he calls up the team right away and says, I think you can use some pitching depth. I think Snell would be good for you, Montgomery would be good for you. That's the only reason to hold out because Kareem, if they don't sign now at the start of spring training, by the time it's opening day, it's 1 year deals. That's the only where it's going to go. And that's unfortunate because for these players of their ilk, I think if they had signed earlier in the offseason, I think all of them could have got between 2 to 4 year deals.
Yes, I think so too. But Blake Snell, I think he can actually go with the Mets. Right now because Senga is getting shut and he's going to be shut down for 3 weeks, so he might have a little opening right there with them. And we know that the Mets owner Cohen is not afraid to spend some money. He already did it last year, absolutely. So he might just put up some money in there for a couple of years, 3, 4 years.
So one way to fix this Scott Boras, fix this free agency dilemma, Rob Manfred, he's a person, he said now this is his last term. He's going to be the commissioner till 2029. He says that's it, he's done. He's done a lot of changes in the game over the last few years, a ton of changes. And I see more changes coming, which we'll talk about next week. But the one change I wanted to run by you, Kareem, is the changing of the free agency period. And he says, I think we need to limit of when players can sign. That way they can be in spring training on time. We don't extort money out of teams. We don't hold out. I'm not I'm not opposed to this idea. Now, I think December is a very short deadline. I would say maybe we make it end of January. Do you think that this is a good thing for baseball, this idea with Manfred, as far as limiting when players can sign, or do you see this being a slippery slope?
That's never going to happen with the Major League Baseball Players Association. All right. You put a deadline on when you can sign or you cannot sign on a free agent. Everybody waits to be a free agent once, at least in your career. And for you to put, 2, 3 weeks to do so, it's not going to work with the Major League Baseball Players Association. I can guarantee you that.
Well, if I'm players, okay, and I hear you on that, and the baseball does have one of the strongest unions, obviously you can see based on the salaries. Um, when I'm thinking through now as a player, like I think of Lourdes Gurriel Jr., for example, and he got a pretty nice sized contract from the Diamondbacks, and he signed pretty early in free agency. I think he's looking at these numbers now and he's thinking, pretty happy I signed early, because a guy like him, you go from being, let's say four, I don't know, it's around 4 years, 50 million, let's say 3 years, 35, whatever it is. If you don't sign early enough, when teams spend their budgets, all of a sudden you're coming to spring training on a minor league deal, or you're coming in on a 1 year deal, 5 million, 10 million. And I think a lot of these players that are saying, I'm looking towards free agency. I think the rule now seems let's sign before Christmas, let's sign before New Year's. I think this is the better way to go.
Yeah, I mean, you get your Christmas presents as you sign. You get the big fat bonus for you and your family to buy the presents. And you buy, you know what? Your time to be relaxed with your family, enjoy the time so you can go to spring training and actually work on the things that you need to work, or the team is asking you to do different from the year before. Not going to spring training trying to think, am I going to make the team? What's going to happen with me? They're going to let me go at the end, because you never know what's going to happen. You can actually get injured. It's a lot of things that can happen during spring training that actually happens that is nothing that you control. You cannot control that.
And I think it's very convenient for people to blame Scott Boras, but at the end of the day, you having been there in that position, I don't think he arbitrarily goes and denies contracts without checking with his clients. I'm pretty certain when you sign with Scott Boras, you make a strategy and you're usually sticking to the strategy. But I'm pretty sure if a team offers one of his clients money early on in free agency, he doesn't shut it down with at least calling his client and saying, hey, we got an offer on the table, Cody Bellinger. Right now, you can sign 3 years, 100 million. But we know we want 6 years, 200 million. I say, let's continue to hold out. What are your thoughts? I'm pretty sure that's the process, not the player saying, Scott, it's up to you, buddy. My phone's off for the offseason. Call me when the contract's ready. I don't think it works like that.
In reality, I will think that he actually shuts down a couple deals without telling their players. Like if it's a low ball deal, he won't even mention it to the player unless he thinks it's something worthwhile talking about it. That's usually how it works. When agents tells you, hey, you know what, I got offer, 60 millions over 3 years, but I think it's a low ball for you. That's why I not even say anything. He takes that, but over 100 million 3 years, then you have to make a phone call. But again, you trust in a person that has interest in 50, 80 guys that are making 100, $200 million. He has nothing to lose. You are the one that actually have something to lose because, again, in baseball, you never know if you're going to be healthy the whole year or the whole contract. So you have to take whatever is guaranteed.
So let me ask you this as we're summing up today's episode, because if I'm, let's say, a top prospect in baseball, okay, and I'm, let's say, 2, 3 years in the major leagues, and after this offseason, Scott Boras calls me up and says, hey, I'm really interested in you. I think we could do good work together. I think I'd be asking him, aren't you the guy that had the top five free agents that didn't sign into spring training? One guy was supposed to get 200 million. Now he had to settle for these 3 years with the opt outs. I think this is not, he's going to have to do a lot of explaining in this one because this is the off season. I don't think he's going to feel good about, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I mean, he can might send his plane and take you to a nice dinner or golf course and try to, show you the luxury that you can get once you get a contract. But you have to think about the long term. And like you mentioned it, right now, not a lot of teams are, picking up the phone and saying, okay, Scott, whatever you say, I'm ready. Here's the money. Now they're actually stepping back a little bit and let it play out these situations, especially with these four guys now. Cody just signed a contract because I'm sure he was desperate.
And he wanted to come back to the Cubs. It obviously was a good fit. It rejuvenated his career. So it's the logical step. Near the end in LA, let's not forget, this was a guy when he left the Dodgers, teams were not lining up to sign him. Like they were afraid to pay him $10 million. Let's call it what it is. And
Exactly.
obviously, it was a good fit for him. And I always advocate, the grass always seems greener on the other side. But if you have a good situation, it's going well with you with the coaches, you like the fans, you like the city, and you're playing well there, stay there. There's no reason to move then. So I agree. I think that that was a good fit for him. And if I'm the other players now, I'm just thinking about this and I'm saying to myself, our team's not wanting to work with my agent. Our team's blacklisting him. But I think that any team that says they're not going to really work with Scott Boras, if they want the player and Scott's going to give them a contract they can afford, they're signing him at the end of the day. So I don't see this as a master collusion against him. I see it as something very simple. When you go to buy a car, a $20,000 car is $20,000. A $40,000 car is $40,000. A used car that's 10 plus years old, that's $5,000, is a $5,000 car, and that's it. And Scott can be the greatest salesman that he can be, but you can't sell a $5,000 car for $20,000. And a discussion.
You are absolutely correct. You can't, especially these guys, like I mentioned again, they're a little bit older, and the 7 to 10 year deals, they're not going to happen anymore. You're looking between 3 and 6 max, and that's with some clauses in there.
And this is where, you know what, if I was a team that wanted to get some superstars, maybe I'm not signing them early in free agency. Maybe I'll say, you know what, I'll wait till everybody else spent all their money and then I'm going to get my bargains and then I'll get two players for the price of one. So there's a lot of reasons why to hold out. And I think you're going to see by the time we're going to hit opening day, there's going to be some players that are on certain teams. Because remember, there's still a Joey Votto's out there, Brandon
Mm-hmm.
Belt. There's still a lot of talent out there. And you're going to be picking up these guys for 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. It's going to be quite interesting, Kareem, I'm going to say, because everybody will at the end of the day get a job. But like I was saying at the beginning, you may have started off the offseason wanting $10 million. All of a sudden, now you're on a minor league deal with an invite to spring training, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Joey Votto, I don't see him playing anywhere else but Cincinnati. He's going to end up trying to work out a deal for probably his last year of his career with them and retire. I cannot see him anywhere else.
I only thought Toronto because he's from Toronto originally.
Mhm.
But when they went off and signed Justin Turner, they have Daniel Vogelbach on a minor league deal. I think there's no more room anymore. And when you get enough of these guys in here, how many more of them can you start bringing in? So we shall see. Maybe Votto will end up back in Cincinnati. I do like the idea when somebody goes to the Hall of Fame, when they spent
Mhm.
their whole career with one team, Robin Yount, Cal Ripken. It'd be nice if Votto could be
Jeter.
up there with them.
Yep.
Absolutely. So we'll be back next week, folks, because we got one of my favorite topics. And this is the one that always blows up the internet. And I know Kareem's going to have his opinions. We're going to be talking about MLB expansion. See you back soon on the Chosen Baseball Journey.